Before start this video, please subscribe my channel and click on bell icon. Thanks.
In the wake of World War II, the looming threat of a nuclear conflict with the Soviet Union instilled a pervasive sense of apprehension across the United States. Soon, it led various institutions to fortify their commitment to what they saw as critical American values. In Hollywood, this phenomenon really took hold in 1944 with the emergence of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. The organization soon became known as the MPA. It made sure any entertainer involved in screenwriting, directing, or acting faced immediate ostracization from the industry if they were suspected of communist ties. The birth of the MPA was motivated by a desire to safeguard American values. It sought to act as a guardian against potential subversive influences within entertainment. Its actions were driven by the perceived necessity to preserve American cinema amid an ideological struggle with the Soviet Union. While we look down on the MPA's actions today, it was very powerful at the time. The power its members wielded was used to crush many careers of subversive entertainers. These writers, directors, filmmakers, and actors were blacklisted from working in Hollywood. Many waited years to work again, if at all. In this list, you'll learn all about 10 shocking and lesser-known stories from that unfortunate era of American cinema. Related, 10 golden Hollywood scandals that were covered up. 10 Depression-era wage wars set the stage amid the Great Depression. A wave of concern swept across the nation. Thus, it became what we know today as the Screen Actors Guild. Some of these organizations were indeed founded by members affiliated with the American Communist Party. But they weren't Soviet sympathizers as much as they simply wanted fair wages and improved working conditions. While picketing for their own labor rights in the late 1930s, screenwriters and directors demonstrated solidarity with other industry professionals like cameramen, set builders, and technical workers. Unfortunately, their association with the communist ideology led many to be targeted and later blacklisted. 9. The Tale of the Hollywood 10. The Hollywood 10 were a bunch of screenwriters who faced accusations of sympathizing with the Communist Party. If they denied being communists, they would face even more probing questions. On the other hand, if they admitted their association with the party, they were relentlessly pressed to reveal the names of other party members they knew. The House Un-American Activities Committee insisted that all suspected communists admit their involvement. For the writers, the only way they could escape the ordeal was by betraying their friends and exposing other party members. However, the group of 10, including famed writer Dalton Trumbo, chose not to respond to these questions. That was their right, protected by the Fifth Amendment, but it didn't offer them an easy future. Years later, many of these writers, including Trumbo, managed to continue their writing careers. They penned scripts under fake names and worked by secretly ghostwriting for their friends. Her popularity in the paper effectively forced them to conform or risk having their reputations destroyed. Shockingly, some of the people she targeted were so devastated by her relentless humiliation that they tragically took their own lives. Once, British actress Merle Oberon confronted Hopper and asked her why she derived so much pleasure from ruining lives. Additionally, her character served as inspiration for Tilda Swinton's portrayal in 2016's Hail Caesar. He decided to close down the factory, not because the company had gone bankrupt, but simply to save money by cutting jobs deemed unnecessary. Unfortunately, this meant many hard-working people lost their livelihoods and got laid off. The film was written by Lester Cole, who adapted it from a novel originally penned by Sinclair Lewis. Interestingly, Cole would later become one of the aforementioned Hollywood 10. And The President's Mystery was no small reason why. Business moguls and American leaders were concerned. Movies like Cole's 1936 flick depicted business owners and corporations in too negative of a light. In reality, we all know companies sometimes resort to laying off employees as a way to cut costs. But during the 1940s and 1950s, if a screenwriter dared to depict corporations as the bad guys or ever showed unhappy workers, it was deemed un-American. That, in turn, was punishable by being blacklisted. This mindset prevailed during those 2 decades and greatly shaped public perception. By those standards, a more recent movie like Office Space might have been seen as the most communist film ever made. As time went on, especially in the 1980s, laying off employees for budgetary reasons became common. By the early 2000s, it seemed like everyone knew someone who had gone through this rough experience. Then, when the Great Recession struck in 2008, the truth about corporate corruption became really undeniable. Instead of suppressing this truth, Hollywood started releasing movies like The Big Short, which exposed the rampant greed within corporate America. Old films could only show happy workers, or risk being banned. 4. 6. The fight against feminism. Cultural shift. Women's roles. In the 1950s, there was a time when filmmakers with supposed communist sympathies included strong female characters in their movies. In the Soviet Union, for example, many mid-century films showcased courageous women. They were often portrayed by the talented Tatyana Samilova, best known for her unforgettable performance in The Cranes Are Flying. In the 1940s, Hollywood also produced some notable feminist movies. However, they started to fade fast after World War II. When husbands returned from war, they found it challenging to convince their wives to give up their jobs. Politicians in America wanted them back as full-time housewives. This shift toward work posed a threat to the traditional American way of life, many leaders believed. It centered around Harriet, a woman who declined a marriage proposal to pursue a career as a fashion designer in New York City. Ultimately, Harriet realized that friends, family, and love held greater value than money. Consequently, writers became apprehensive about incorporating feminist themes into their scripts. They feared accusations of communist sympathy from higher-ups. It took decades for Hollywood to recover from the impact of the Blacklist on feminism. But throughout the 1950s, the image of the ideal stay-at-home mom who had the kids in check and dinner ready by 5 p.m. dominated nearly every film. As we've seen already, the MPA's main goal was to uncover hidden fascists and communists in the movie industry. For Disney and others in the organization, they believed the World War II battle against Nazism was not yet won. What we do know is that he frequently clashed with Wood regarding the organization's operations. Shortly after the war, Walt Disney was removed from his position as MPA vice president. And yet he still retained some anti-communist leanings. In the late 1940s, when artists at one of his studios went on strike, Disney accused communists of orchestrating it. Nevertheless, he did not attempt to expose or dismiss individuals he suspected of being communists. His belief was that some communist ideas were influencing the younger generation and causing change. Even today, he holds a prominent place in Hollywood history. However, there was one particular film, High Noon, which sparked a major disagreement for him. Wayne never changed, going all the way to his death in 1979, believing that years later, in interviews later in life, the Duke slammed un-American filmmaking of the tumultuous period and railed against communism and radical liberals. As it turned out, screenwriter Carl Foreman carefully crafted the film as an allegory to shed light on the McCarthy-era witch hunts. For years, he allowed others to claim credit for his exceptional screen work. 3 Ronald Reagan turns tail president of the Screen Actors Guild. Before Ronald Reagan became president of the United States, he had an important role in the Screen Actors Guild. It all started back in 1946, when he found himself in the middle of a disagreement between two Hollywood unions. One of the groups, led by a member of the Communist Party, was causing a public commotion in seeking enhanced worker protections. His task was to provide the names of known communists in the film industry. Unfortunately, his dedication to this cause had consequences for his personal life. His first wife, Jane Wyman, requested a divorce from him because of the backdoor move. Interestingly, even though Reagan was actively fighting against communism, he decided to remove Nancy Davis's name from the list. Instead of seeing her as a threat, he fell in love with her. She suddenly wasn't a communist anymore. They got married, and she, of course, became the soon-to-be infamous Nancy Reagan. The majority of these celebrities held liberal views. While they themselves were not communists, they witnessed the corruption and complete disregard for the constitutional rights of the Hollywood 10. However, his association with the committee caused friends to turn against him. They mistakenly labeled him as a communist. Bogart received menacing letters in the mail and faced harassment in public. In such a scenario, one is doomed regardless of their response. The relentless pressure compelled many of these actors to yield under its weight. Thankfully, though, the Committee for the First Amendment persisted. Thanks for watching. Credits to listverse.com. Please subscribe my channel for more videos.